What if I told you that Noah's Ark wasn't just an improvised wooden barge, but a carefully designed machine, full of technological solutions that science would only come to understand thousands of years later? And what if I showed you that behind that story, many treat as a children's tale, there was an intelligent ventilation system, food logistics, waste management, structural balance, and even naval engineering principles that still impress experts today? Imagine this: a gigantic wooden ship built on dry land by a man of advanced age and his family, without cranes, without computers, without machines, without electricity. Yet, this vessel was capable of withstanding global storms, housing thousands of animals of different species, maintaining potable water, preserving food, keeping air breathable, and maintaining stability in a raging ocean for over a year. If that isn't technology, what is? Throughout this video, you will discover the truth almost no one has told you. Noah's Ark was not a rustic box tossed upon the waves, but a highly integrated system that combined knowledge of materials, hydrodynamics, internal architecture, biology, resource management, and above all, a type of engineering inspired directly by God. We are going to dismantle the layers of this construction, piece by piece, to reveal the secret technology that made this work possible. And in the process, you might realize that what we call a miracle often involves impeccable design as well. If you like deep biblical investigations that unite faith, history, and science, take a moment right now before you get wrapped up in the explanation and forget. Hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. That way, you support this type of content and won't miss any of the upcoming revelations about the mysteries of the Bible and antiquity. Let's start with what everyone thinks they know, but almost no one explores deeply: the dimensions of the Ark. The Bible describes measurements in cubits, which when converted reveal a ship with extremely well-calculated proportions for stability in violent seas. We aren't talking about a symbolic little boat, but something comparable in scale to modern cargo ships. The ratios between length, width, and height were not chosen at random. They follow a pattern that naval engineers today recognize as ideal for resisting high waves, strong winds, and abrupt water movements. In other words, the Ark wasn't made to sail fast, but not to capsize, to be a gigantic floating survival capsule. This is the first point of our secret technology: stability. In engineering, there is always a delicate balance between speed, maneuverability, and safety. The Ark totally dispensed with speed and maneuverability to focus on one single thing: remaining intact and upright, whatever the violence of the flood. This explains why its shape was more like a large elongated rectangle than a sleek ship with a fine bow. In the context of the flood, the goal wasn't to reach a port, but to survive until the waters receded. And in that scenario, the proportion adopted for the Ark is brilliant. But having a large and stable hull isn't enough. One of the hidden technologies of the Ark lay in the choice of wood and the use of coatings. The biblical text mentions gopher wood, a term that generates debate to this day. Whether it was cypress, cedar, or a species that no longer exists, the fact is that it was a type of wood with high water resistance, good durability, and the capacity to withstand great mechanical stress for long periods. To top it off, the Ark was coated inside and out with a type of bitumen, a substance similar to natural asphalt, used throughout history in constructions requiring extreme waterproofing. This double coating acted as a sealant layer, closing gaps, protecting against leaks, and increasing the structural lifespan of the vessel. This detail about the bitumen is more important than it seems. Wooden ships always suffer from leaks, cracks, and the expansion and contraction of material due to humidity and temperature. The use of a sealant material, carefully applied to the entire structure, is the kind of solution only someone with practical and technical knowledge would adopt. We are talking about a prehistoric system of insulation and sealing, which resembles in essence the modern concept of watertight shielding for submarines and large cargo ships. In an era without silicone, without epoxy resin, without synthetic paint, bitumen was the high-tech product available. Now, think about the construction phase. Noah and his sons didn't have hydraulic cranes, trucks, or computers with 3D modeling software. Yet they needed to erect a gigantic structure with dozens upon dozens of beams, crossbars, and precise joints. This brings us to another aspect of the secret technology, the modular construction system. It is very likely that the Ark was made in modules, with large wooden panels pre-assembled on the ground and then hoisted up with pulleys and ramps using simple principles of leverage. When you combine this with a repetitive design, various similar internal sections, organized like cells or drawers, you create something that is at once easier to build, easier to maintain, and much more resistant, exactly as we do today in large modular structures. This cellular model of the Ark didn't just serve to give the hull rigidity, it also created an internal skeleton of interconnected compartments. If one part of the structure were damaged, the others would help absorb and redistribute the loads, reducing the risk of total collapse. It is the same logic used in modern ships that possess watertight compartments. If one compartment floods, the others keep the vessel afloat. The Ark, therefore, functioned as a large set of structural boxes, aligned and distributed in a way that reinforced the whole assembly against torsional stress and the impact of waves. But the secret technology doesn't stop at wooden structure. Perhaps the most surprising aspect is the internal logistics to keep thousands of animals alive for over a year. And here we enter an area that mixes engineering, biology, and resource management. It is no exaggeration to say that the Ark was a kind of controlled biosphere, where everything needed to be planned: food, water, ventilation, light, waste management, physical space, sleep, noise, internal climate. Calculation errors could quickly lead to chaos, unbearable stench, the proliferation of diseases, and the mass death of animals. One of the great technological secrets lies in how the concept of animal kinds drastically reduces the number needed on board. Instead of every modern species, the focus was on basic ancestors capable of later originating the diversity we know today. This cuts to the root the idea of millions of animals crammed together. In practice, the plausible number is much smaller, which makes the project logistically viable. Fewer animals mean less food, less water, less space, and less excrement, but still enough to require highly efficient strategic organization. A detail rarely commented on is the probable choice of young or subadult animals. In technological terms, this is an optimization decision. Young animals occupy less space, eat less, produce less waste, adapt faster, and upon disembarking, have more fertile life ahead of them to repopulate the Earth. It is a simple but brilliant solution, showing that the technology of the Ark lies not just in wood and bitumen, but also in intelligent decisions of biological management. Now let's talk about what might be one of the most impressive systems of the Ark: ventilation. Imagine thousands of animals breathing in a closed space. Without good airflow, the concentration of carbon dioxide, methane, and ammonia would rise rapidly, making the environment toxic. That's where a component called the Zohar comes in, described as an opening at the top of the Ark, likely running along its length. This opening, combined with the temperature difference between the interior and exterior and the height difference between the decks, created a natural chimney effect. Warm, lighter air rises and exits through the top. pulling fresh air in through the lower parts. This passive ventilation system is the same idea used today in sustainable buildings, industrial warehouses, agricultural greenhouses, and even bioclimatic architecture. Instead of depending on fans or air conditioning, the structure itself is designed to allow air to circulate continuously, using only the laws of physics. In the Ark's case, this was a matter of life or death. The secret technology here wasn't sophisticated equipment, but the intelligent use of design to generate airflow. Besides air circulation, there was the problem of internal lighting. The Ark couldn't have dozens of torches and bonfires scattered about, risking fire in a completely wooden structure, the worst possible disaster. The solution likely involved the use of small oil lamps placed in strategic points and maximum utilization of the light entering through the Zohar during the day. Perhaps some internal walls were treated or painted to reflect light better, amplifying the brightness in corridors and circulation areas. This type of solution is used in architecture to this day. Light and reflective surfaces reduce the need for artificial lighting. We arrive then at one of the most delicate systems, waste handling. Tons of feces and urine over 370 days of confinement represent a gigantic threat to health. It is unrealistic to imagine Noah and his family hauling buckets and buckets of filth randomly. This would require almost industrial planning. The strongest hypothesis is that the stalls and cages had slightly sloped floors, with gaps or gutters that directed waste to specific corridors. These corridors, in turn, led the material to accumulation areas, where it could be periodically dumped out of the Ark via sluice gates near the waterline. In practice, this means the Ark functioned like a large sanitary drainage system, a primitive yet extremely functional sewer. Instead of depending on buckets and brute force all the time, the design of the construction itself helped gravity do the heavy lifting. This is exactly how a good part of modern sewage infrastructure works. Pipe inclination, collection points, outlet gates. The difference is that in Noah's case, all this was done in wood and with the technology available in antiquity. Linked to this is the water system. It wasn't enough to have stored fresh water. It was necessary to ensure replenishment, filtration, and distribution. The rain from the flood itself was likely utilized with catchment systems on the Ark's roof, channeling water to large reservoirs. These reservoirs, in turn, could be interconnected with channels and pipes made of hollowed wood or bamboo, leading water to different areas. Before being consumed, the water could pass through layers of sand, stones, and charcoal, acting as a filter, a technique already known in different ancient cultures. This transformed the Ark into something even closer to a mobile water treatment station. Food, another critical point, also required solutions resembling modern preservation technologies, only with the resources of the time. Sun dehydration, storage in dry and ventilated environments, use of sealed containers, mixing of high-durability grains, compacted hay and dried fruits. All of this made up a stock planned to last over a year without spoiling. In a context like this, any wasted space was an impossible luxury. Every deck, every corridor, every gap was thought out to balance circulation, storage, and rapid access to whatever was necessary. Amidst all this, there was still the life of Noah's own family. They needed a space minimally isolated from the deafening noise of the animals, the constant rocking, and the odors. It is likely their quarters were located in a higher, protected area, perhaps with extra layers of wood and fabrics for acoustic and thermal insulation. This is also technology, the capacity to create different environments within the same structure, with specific functions, work areas, rest, handling, storage. Exactly as we design ships, submarines, and even space stations today. Another fascinating aspect of this secret technology is the balance of the ark regarding the weight of the animals, water, and food. A poorly planned distribution could make the ship list, stress one side too much, or even compromise stability. Therefore, it makes sense to imagine that the heaviest animals were placed on the lower decks, near the center of the ark, while smaller ones and birds stayed on the upper levels. This creates a low and stable center of gravity, reducing the risk of capsizing even in giant waves. Again, it is the same principle large ships use: heavy cargo below, light above. There is still the question of how the animals got to the ark. The biblical text makes it clear they came to Noah, guided by God. But from a practical standpoint, the technology enters after they arrive. Organization of stalls by type, separation between predators and prey, animals that need humid, dry, dark or brighter environments. Some would need prolonged rest, others would be naturally more agitated. This required knowledge, even if empirical, of animal behavior. Noah didn't have modern zoos as a reference, but he had clear instructions, preparation time, and above all, divine direction not to err in the structure. Besides the physical part, there is a type of invisible technology operating in parallel: the management of time, routine, and mental sanity. Living locked up with the same family in a closed environment, surrounded by noise, uncertainty, and hard labor for over a year, is an immense psychological test. In such a scenario, routine organization becomes a resource as vital as food. Fixed schedules for feeding animals, cleaning shifts, system maintenance, rest, prayer, meditation, and sleep, all of this helps the mind not to collapse. Today, we call this mental hygiene, routine discipline, stress management. On the ark, this was survival. The structure of the ark itself, by dividing space into compartments and decks, helped mentally organize the work. The lower deck, associated with great beasts and the biggest cleaning challenges. The middle deck, with medium-sized animals. The upper deck, with birds, small animals, and human quarters. This spatial hierarchy is a form of organizational technology. You don't need digital monitors, spreadsheets, and apps to create an efficient system. You just need clarity of flow, function, and priority. When we look at all of this together, precise dimensions, ideal proportions for stability, adequate wood, bituminous coating, internal cellular structure, passive ventilation, waste management with sloped channels, rainwater catchment and filtration, food preservation, strategic weight distribution, routine organization, and even psychological care, it becomes difficult to sustain the idea that the ark was a primitive construction. On the contrary, it reveals itself as a type of floating laboratory, a refuge planned with an impressive combination of logic and faith. And here enters a profound spiritual point. The technology of the ark was not an end in itself. It was part of a greater plan. The project wasn't designed just to work, but to save, preserve, restart. The ark is, at the same time, a work of engineering and a symbol of a covenant. And this is also a form of technology, one that deals not only with wood, but with destiny, with purpose, with the continuity of life. After the flood, when the waters receded and the ark rested on land, all that internal technology ceased to be necessary. The stalls emptied, the waste channels became useless, the water filters fell silent. But the impact of what was done there continued echoing on Earth. From that small nucleus of preserved life, biodiversity and humanity itself spread across the world again. The Ark wasn't just any ship, it was a creation reboot system. Dun. It is interesting to note that many of the solutions we attribute to modern wisdom were, in essence, already present in the Ark. Natural ventilation, rainwater harvesting, modular structure, intelligent load distribution, design focused on survival rather than comfort, maximum use of gravity, food preservation, organization by compartments. All of this shows that the Creator, in giving instructions to Noah, didn't just communicate a religious plan, but also a technical project that anticipated principles engineering would take centuries to formalize. When you understand this, the story stops being just Noah, an old man, building a giant boat out of obedience, and becomes God transmitting to a man a detailed, precise, optimized project capable of sustaining life in extreme conditions for a prolonged time. The secret technology of the Ark isn't lost. It is hidden between the lines of the text, in the numbers, in the proportions, in the details that many people skim over, but which, when examined calmly, reveal a level of planning that is absolutely extraordinary. Perhaps looking at this, you identify with Noah's situation in another aspect. Sometimes God gives us instructions that seem strange, exaggerated, even crazy to those on the outside. Building an ark on dry land, preparing for a flood no one had seen before, reorganizing all of life around something that hasn't happened yet. This seems insane to the natural mindset. But just as the ark revealed its genius when the waters began to rise, many of the strange instructions God gives us today only show their complete wisdom when the storms arrive. If all of this is making sense to you, if you perceive that behind this story exists a God who cares about details, who understands engineering, biology, logistics, but also understands your heart, then this is the perfect moment for you to draw closer to these truths. And of course, if this content is opening your mind and strengthening your faith, don't forget, hit the like button now, subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who thinks the story of the Ark is kid stuff, and invite that person to see the level of depth that exists here. Because the next time you hear about Noah's Ark, I want you not to think just of a childish cartoon with animals in a row, but of a high-complexity project guided by a God who masters not only the spiritual, but also the physical, the technical, the scientific. A God who knows exactly how to save, preserve, and restart. And in the next videos, we are going to continue unraveling other biblical constructions that hide engineering and technology principles far ahead of their time. So stick with us, because the truth almost no one told you is just starting to be revealed.